the proponents of DEI, they don't care about the groups they purport to represent. They don't care about Blacks. They don't care about gays and lesbians. They don't care about women.
All right, make sure that you subscribe and hit that bell notification for future episodes. This episode is brought to you by Cardio Miracle, the supplement that I take every single day. Click on cwicmedia.com, that's cwicmedia.com. Scroll to the bottom and watch the video on why I take this supplement every day. Spoiler alert, it's because it works. I'm very excited about this interview with Dr. Carol Swain. This is someone I have followed for the last couple of years. She's been in the media a lot more the last 30 days because she is one that the former Harvard president, Claudine Gay, plagiarized. She pulled a lot of her ideas, took some exact quotes from some of Dr. Swain's work. Dr. Swain is someone whose voice needs to be amplified and heard more. Her last book is The Adversity of Diversity. She talks about why DEI does not work and how these things are breaking down our civilization. I think you're really going to like this. Here we go. All right, welcome to Cwic Show. My name is Greg Mattson, and I am your host. In this episode, we have invited Dr. Carol Swain, very special guest, onto the show. Dr. Swain, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, in the news here recently over at Harvard, again, we have the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, Sherry Ann Charleston, who was just hit with 40 plagiarism accusations, including claiming the credit for her husband's writings. This is just another domino here at Harvard. What is going on over there?
I mean, I could say that the high-profile cases that we've focused on involve individuals that were hired probably to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. But there are certainly white researchers and white authors and journalists that have been caught plagiarizing. But in the case of Harvard, because everyone thought it was the gold standard, you know, the flagship international university where all of our Supreme Court justices, heads of newspapers, and elite should come from, it's even more startling, the low standards there. I, for one, hope that it leads to a dethroning of Harvard. For a long time, I felt that because Harvard has the reputation of being Harvard, that people who should not be in positions of authority were placed there just because they had a Harvard degree.
Okay, so this is very odd to me. I mean, this goes right to what you talk about even in your book with DEI, your book, The Adversity of Diversity. Great title, by the way. What are we going to... Here we have the Flagship University where we seem to have lowered standards to push DEI. It's almost a parody in that case.
And, you know, we say Flagship University to refer to our state universities. Harvard was above that. It was the world-class international university, the gold standard of universities. And what is going on is that critical race theory, I would argue, and Marxism has led leaders to endorse a set of ideas and values that have just led to a lowering of standards. And we find also at Harvard, they have a chaplain who is an atheist. He's the university chaplain. It's just so dismaying, because the Ivy League institutions, I believe all except one of them, were established for the training of Christian ministers. And so they almost started off as seminaries. Most of the great universities of the Western world started out as religious institutions. The fact that they have been turned upside down and that they are full of corruption, immorality, many of the worst ideas that have impacted our society came from scholars in these institutions. And we find that at Harvard, even in the medical field, that there are doctors in cancer research and neuroscience that also plagiarized, and they're having to retract their papers. And these are people that are impacting public policy. These are the ones who get appointed to high cabinet positions.
You know, you're kind of right in the middle of this. You're a political science and legal scholar. You've written and gotten published several times. You are one where, at least in a couple of cases, Claudine Gay, ex-president of Harvard, plagiarized you in your works from your books. So you've got a direct feeling of exactly what this means as far as being plagiarized. And then she puts out a letter in a resignation and she doesn't even acknowledge this on the side about the plagiarism. How does that make you feel with this? And more importantly, what does this mean in terms of putting someone up in that position right there?
Yeah.
How do you,
there are lots of things going on. First of all, I'd like to make clear that I didn't just publish a few articles. I have 12 books that were either single authored or edited, but Claudine Gay has no books. And my first book, Black Faces, Black Interests, the representation of African Americans in Congress, won 3 national prizes, including the highest prize a political scientist can win. It was cited 3 times by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2 different cases. And it was a seminal book on representation. It was a path-breaking book that opened up many areas of research for other scholars. That's what she plagiarized in her dissertation. And so how it makes me feel, first of all, I didn't know that the plagiarism occurred. In the late 1990s, during the time that I was about to leave Princeton, I kept hearing about this brilliant Black woman. And by then, my ideas had started to cause me to fall out of favor because I questioned race-based affirmative action and I was not with the program. And this was after I was tenured. But I heard about Claudine Gay and how brilliant she was. I had no idea that she was stealing my research to help frame her dissertation. And that when I looked at her early articles, I would see my ideas really being used to frame those articles. She cites me in the bibliography of many of those papers, but she doesn't cite me as the inspiration of her work. And she doesn't cite me in many places where I should have been cited if you were intellectually honest. And how it makes me feel, I feel like her whole research was built on my back, and that she does not have a record that would warrant tenure at a tier 1 institution, much less an Ivy League school, and that she's not really Dr. Gay, because to be doctor, you have to successfully defend a dissertation that has original ideas. She did not, she borrowed from many people's research for her dissertation. So in my opinion, she's not even a doctor. And how does it make me feel that she's drawing a $900,000 a year a salary? She's on the faculty, and she blamed racism for her exposure. It doesn't make me feel good for higher education and academic integrity when Harvard chose to stand behind her, and instead of admitting at first the plagiarism, they called it duplicative language. And they're still trying to make the case that what she did doesn't rise to the level that would warrant her dismissal. I disagree. But if Harvard starts dismissing all the people that they're catching for plagiarism, there's going to be a lot of job opportunities at Harvard.
That's interesting. Well, so we look at here, we have Claudine Gay, the example of Claudine Gay. What we have really what seems to be this, what brought this all out was the hypocritical opinions of anti-Semitic attitudes on campus at MIT, at UPenn, et cetera. It was how has academia gotten to this point where it's almost as if everyone's had their head in the sand on what is happening here, And now all of a sudden, after George Floyd, this explosion of it's almost like the curtain's been pulled back on everything. How did we get this far without mainstream culture knowing what's happening?
But they became activists, more interested in social engineering than in truth. And there's a article posted on X this morning or Twitter this morning about Chris Rufo, and he's being accused of sharing an article by some people they accuse of scientific racism. And during the time I was at Princeton, the Human Genome Project had a number of Princeton scholars working on it, high profile. And I remember attending some of their lectures where they discussed findings. They're making a decision, or at least it was known that there were certain findings that they would never share or reveal because they felt it was too troubling. And so when it comes to, differences between human beings or people groups, or even, the Human Genome Project would settle everything about whether men can be women or women can be men. It's all there. But because of the desire to engage in social engineering, we find that scientists are not totally honest with us. And I think it happened because of the Marxism. The ends justify the means, and universities see themselves as the vehicles for social and political change. And they believe that the elite structure, that they get to decide how the rest of us should live our lives. And they do this by punishing people who they consider apostates, and by withholding information, and by distorting science. And they're activists, they're not scholars.
Well, you bring up Marxism, right? This is something that I think a lot of people have an issue with. They hear that and they say, come on, this is conspiracy theory. And yet anyone who has studied the roots of DEI or some of critical social justice, what a lot of people call in the culture wokeness, it goes right down through what you go right down, whether it's Kimberly Crenshaw, Derek Bell, going back into Angela Davis, going into Marcuse and the Frankfurt School and Gramsci, and then it goes right down to Marx and Engels. Why is there this pushback on understanding that these are what we're getting today with DEI? These are Marxian rooted tenets.
Well, some of the people that push those ideas don't deny that it's Marxism. They think Marxism is great, and they would like a socialist communist society. In fact, you see how communist China has fared so well whenever there's a Democratic president. I think that they really do believe that capitalism is evil. They, as elites, believe that if they destroy America and the Western world, that somehow they will be on top. And so for the people who have less education are the ones who are very trusting of leaders. It's easy to say, oh, they're a bunch of conspiracy theorists, don't pay any attention to them. But we do know it is Marxism. It has seeped into every sector of our society, and it's part of the destruction of the family, the destruction of differences between males and females, the transgenderization of children, the pushing of pedophilia, every decadent thing, the pushing of the Church of Satan above the Christian church, the anti-Semitism. All of these things are connected in many different ways. Some of us know that. And, I don't mind being called a conspiracy theorist. To me, it just means that you're getting too close to the truth. Whenever you get too close to the truth, they try to discredit you by calling you a conspiracy theorist. It means you're over the target.
Yeah, definitely. I think as you pull, you bring up all these different ideas, the sexual liberation that goes right along with the idea of critical theory and throwing off the shackles of the oppressor or anybody else. They're throwing off the shackles of social norms and sexuality, some order of sexuality.
They're destroying civilization, and even this crazy, loony situation in America on the campuses where there's so many students that are pro-Hamas, and they think Israel is evil. And these people can excuse the weaponization of rape and the brutality that took place. They pretend that it didn't take place, and they would choose barbarism over civilization. You know that when you see these things happening, that there's something terribly wrong with the universities, that they have allowed young people to be on those campuses that hold those views unchallenged. There doesn't seem to be any adults in charge, and of the adults that are in charge, if they are a member of a, quote, protected group, a DEI group, they are pretty much, they have free reign to do whatever they want to do. They're not going to lose their jobs. They're not going to be suspended. They can get away with saying and doing anything. That's why those three university presidents could not, they struggled with condemning genocide, whether or not it would be against our schools' policies to call for the genocide of Jews. They struggled with that.
Yeah, that's, I'm pulling a quote here from your book, The Adversity of Diversity. You say, we'll get into the DEI here, but you say DEI training breeds racism, pure and simple. Its workers and advocates know that. And they don't care that the rest of us know that. They believe they are in total control of this stuff and that there is nothing the rest of us can do about it. So that's exactly what you're saying there. There is this level of confidence that they have because they're not checked, right? There's not a whole lot of checking. And you've got academia where you've got really what used to be a more of a classical liberal environment 50 years ago has moved into a Marxist environment. And there just doesn't seem to be many checks on that side of the political spectrum.
Well, the arrogance that they have, and they've gotten away, I would say they've gotten away with murder. They've gotten away with so much. And if you look at the Americans that are incarcerated because of January 6th, there are people that are in jail or in prison who have not even had a trial. And they're seeing, most, if not all, are probably white. It seems like they've set up a system where if you are conservative, if you are Christian, if you are white, you don't get the same rights as the protected groups to protest and to exercise your First Amendment rights. And even with in Tennessee, we have a case where there were 6 people that pro-life, ordinary people, your neighbors down the street, they were protesting at an abortion center. They were charged under a new law that the Biden administration passed called the FACE Act, where they can be sentenced to up to 11 years in prison. They've been convicted of violating a federal law that was put through to really stop protests at abortion clinics. And so the January 6ers have been made examples. Little by little, the First Amendment rights of conservatives are being stripped away. And we find that with the truck convoy that has been organized or is in progress, headed towards Eagle Pass, Texas, that only about 20 trucks showed up. And the left would mock that. But what it is that I think people got wise. They did not want the FBI setting them up and creating a situation where they end up being stripped of their rights, like the First Amendment protesters. I call them protesters. It was a protest. Some people got out of hand and they rioted, but they certainly didn't come close to what was done after the death of George Floyd and after many urban riots and what took place in Portland. Not even comparable to things that the left has done with no consequences.
Yeah, it's again, the hypocrisy is absolutely incredible. And what this intersectionality DEI has done, it has, as you say, it protects certain groups, elevates them, and it lowers others. And those groups are not just from immutable characteristics; they are from political positions as well.
Antifa, for example, I mean, they're participating in a settlement, multi-million-dollar settlement, and many of them are just white people that are affiliated with BLM. And so they're redistributing income, but they're putting money into the hands of their activists. And we see every time that there's something being planned by conservatives, there are these job notices that have been posted where they're looking for crisis actors. Why would the government be looking for crisis actors and be hiring people, to participate in these events? These things are taking place. And I would argue that the proponents of DEI, they don't care about the groups they purport to represent. They don't care about Blacks. They don't care about gays and lesbians. They don't care about women. If they cared about women, they wouldn't allow men to take over women's sports and men to beat up women, in some cases kill women. They don't care about women. It's all about destroying America as we know it and eroding those traditional values and principles and just the things that we have known throughout the centuries as truth. Their goal is to destroy everything and to elevate that which is evil.
Dr. Swain, that is so true. There's this pernicious idea with this. I call this the Hydra because it's all, again, comes back to Marxian tenets, and then there's different heads that seem to kind of represent the humanities departments at universities, but and the ever-growing disciplines that are brought up within the university. But it all points back to this idea of let's find vehicles that we can use that are laden with empathy in order to try and push forward this Marxian agenda of bringing down the systems, the status quo, liberty, Western thought, so that we can replace it with something completely different. But most people, they've done such a good job of this, of branding these things as, no, this is about helping racism. This is about helping people with sexual orientation. That to come, you really have to pull back the curtain to understand that they don't care about the means, right?
No, they don't.
For them, the means justify the end.
And, they have kept us so distracted. Some of it for Trump supporters had to do with the many, many cases he and that E. Jean Carroll dominating the news. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is very quickly changing our health care laws in a way that's detrimental. They've been able to sneak through administrative rules where you don't have to give informed consent anymore to be experimented on. And unless people wake up and can get enough mobilization, in May of this year, the World Health Organization will be able to control our health care in the case of another pandemic. And we know that the World Health Organization is affiliated with Communist China. Bill Gates helps fund it. And they will be able to dictate medical protocol, which means if you were to go to a hospital or go to a doctor, they might be able to force you to take certain treatments because it would be the World Health Organization's protocol. That is an issue that I think most of us forgot about it back in 2022. Biden, the Senate passed under Biden legislation that Republicans were not able to block. They're calling what they're doing an agreement and not a treaty. But at the end of the day, unless enough people wake up and push back, authority over our healthcare system will go to the UN because the World Health Organization is an affiliate of the UN. Most of us know that the UN does not like America. It doesn't have our best interest. And there's so many things that are going on, so many things that are wrong, and we're so distracted that we allow these things to take place. And what Obama started, as far as I would say the destruction of America and Western civilization, the Biden administration has taken it to a whole new level. And having Biden, someone that's clearly struggling, with cognitive disability, I don't know if it's dementia or what it is, he serves their purposes because they're able to do all these things around him. And while Conservatives may be laughing at him and all the mistakes he's making, and they have us focused on what they're doing to President Trump. Meanwhile, they're slipping all this stuff through.
Yeah. I want to end on this. I did an episode recently that I called MLK versus DEI. And, so much of what we see here with intersectionality, which is just a broader umbrella of critical race theory, has to do with this idea of colorblindness. And,
right.
Martin Luther King, in his very famous speech, what he's most known for and remembered for, was all about the character of the individual, right, as compared to the color of our skin. And yet those that came together and pulled in from critical theory and pulled in from postmodernism and radical feminism created this critical race theory and beyond. And this is the world now that we live in. They never liked that. They never agreed with that. They pushed off on that. They did not want a civil liberties push that fit within the framework of the Constitution.
Right.
They wanted something completely different. How do you see the idea of colorblindness today? How should we be approaching it?
I mean, it's totally been rejected by the left. In fact, Ibram X. Kendi, who has become, one of the saints of the left, he argues that for racism in favor of racial and ethnic minorities, he labels all white people as racist. And so the notion of a colorblind society, non-discrimination, no, they want discrimination in favor of certain groups. And that's how someone like Claudine Gay and this other lady, the DEI woman, and various other groups, the pro-Palestinian groups that are on campuses, they have been able to rise and have inordinate power because of the system. Ideally, we would go back to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Its goal was to prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, sex, gender, color, national origin, and later disabilities were added. It was to stop discrimination. It protects whites, Asians, it protects men as well as females, it protects Christians as well as Muslims and Jews. That was good legislation. And it created an environment where equal opportunity was sought. People got their feet in the door. They were able to prove themselves, but equity is about equal outcomes. And I think that equity should be eliminated. There are corporations that are moving away from DEI. We need to go back to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That would bring us closer to the original colorblind notion and our goal of integration. At one time, we wanted to be integrated. We wanted assimilation. But just like colorblindness has become a bad word, so has assimilation. I think we need to reclaim what we once knew. And we need to educate people. And there's so many people that DEI sounds great. It sounds great on the outside, but when you look underneath, it is racist. It is evil. It harms racial and ethnic minorities and women. DEI has allowed men to take over women's sports, men to steal beauty pageant contests from women, men to invade women's spaces, and all they have to do is feel like a woman that particular day, or say they feel like a woman, they can go into the ladies' room. That is ludicrous. Those ideas come from my university.
Yeah, well, Dr. Swain, your voice is needed. We need to amplify your voice much more, and that's what I'm trying to do here. I've read your works and love what you're doing, and whatever I can do to help out in leveraging your voice, I would love to do that. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.